We are looking at a new genre of poetry. All of you heard of sonnets and odes and lyrics and songs and elegies, but today we are looking at a genre which we call war poetry. And what exactly is war poetry? It became important to look at this differently because earlier all poems about war and soldiers was glorifying the idea of war, of the great bravery of soldiers. Now suddenly, after the First World War, in fact during the First World War, there came now a group of poets who were themselves soldiers, and they could not glorify war. Because of course they were patriots, but they also had to write about the pain of war, the trouble of war, the torture that they went through. And among these, you would think of poets like Sassoon and Owen and Robert Graves and W.B. Yeats. Poems filled with patriotism, but also about the horrors of war. The Soldier by Rupert Brooke, 1887 to 1915. He wrote a number of war sonnets, idealistic poetry. He was friends with the Bloomsbury group. Remember, some of you might have heard of it. All those intellectuals who met and discussed the issues of the day. Virginia Woolf was one of them in this group. He was enlisted as a soldier, and he once said very famously, "My subject is war and the pity of war." He wrote about 50 poems, and they were published together in a collection called Poems in 1911. The Soldier was written in 1914. The Soldier by Rupert Brooke is a sonnet. We've already talked about the characteristics, the features of a sonnet, so I'm not going to repeat. I go imagining that many of my viewers, listeners, have listened to some of the earlier lectures. Remember our first lecture, sonnet number 130 by William Shakespeare. So here again is a sonnet. Let me read the poem in two parts to you. If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shall be in that earth a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shaped, made aware, gave once her flowers to love, her ways to roar, a body of England's breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by sons of home. Remember, 14 lines? And in this kind of sonnet, it gets divided into two, 8 lines and then 6. If you want to think of the 8 lines, also as 2 quatrains. Remember, the First World War also brought to the human race for the first time the fact that you could be fighting in a place far away from your own country, far, far away from the land where you were born. So this is what Brooke is talking about here when he says, if I were to die in a place which is not England, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. Why is it forever England? Because that is where this Englishman dies and therefore is to be buried. There shall be in that rich earth a richer dust concealed. Remember, dust thou art, to dust thou returneth. So he's thinking of probably the soul, his soul, which is going to be forever left behind in that foreign land. And where is this land? As I mentioned just now, far away from England. Which England? England which bore him, shaped him, gave once her flowers to love, her ways to roar, a body of England's breathing English air. I think we need a little imagination to think of, to understand to empathize with the pain of this soldier who knows he's going to die defending a homeland, but far away from that homeland. Let's see what happens in the next 6 lines. And think this heart all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind, no less give somewhere back the thoughts by England given. Her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day, and laughter learnt of friends and gentleness, in hearts at peace under an English heaven. He's an Englishman. He's proud to be an Englishman, and therefore he talks about the qualities that he possesses as an English soldier. Far away from home, I think these qualities come more to our minds. And therefore he says, there's no evil. Yeats had once beautifully said, I don't love the people I protect. I don't hate the people I fight. I hope you can see the point that these soldiers feel, fighting for a cause, maybe which they don't believe in. And therefore, Brooke goes on, he says, all that England has given me, her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day. England is a beautiful place, my country. And now when I'm far away from my country, I can't but help remember that. And therefore he says, and laughter, learnt of friends. He's looking back at those wonderful days when he was with his peers, at home, not in this foreign land where he's doomed to die. In hearts at peace under an English heaven. So wherever you go, you take your homeland with you. So I'm in a foreign land, but it is as if England is sheltering me even here. So there is that hope even in the midst of despair. As the poem ends, the soldier thinking of a home far away from where he's destined to die. This sonnet, a 14-line poem, is filled with figures of speech. In fact, I think I would need an entire hour to talk about the figures of speech. But let's talk about first the very common ones: alliteration, repetition of the same sound. You have personification, remember, where a non-living thing is given qualities of a human being. England, for example, is a country, but England bore, England gave, you would see all that. You also know caesura, which comes from seize, to stop. So we have caesura when there is a break in the line. That means there's a full stop somewhere in the middle of the line. So if you look at line 3, that is forever England. You have to stop because there's a full stop, and then there shall be. Then we have imagery, creating of that scene for us. You have that there. So often when you think of England, when you think of the foreign land, when you think of the rivers, the flowers, etc. You also have anaphora. We have come across it in earlier poems. Anaphora is the repetition of the same word at the beginning of lines. Maybe not consecutive lines, but in many lines. You would notice, for example, the word a dust, a body, a pulse, and so it goes on. There's a figure of speech which is not very common, and it is ascendaton. What is ascendaton? When we are very agitated, when we are very excited, we don't stop to think of the conjunctions that we need to use, the prepositions that we need to use, and just the words come out. So it's almost as if I'm breathless and I have to say everything that I've got to say. I hope you get that feeling. And you have this here, gave once her flowers, it goes on without the introduction of conjunctions or prepositions. This happens when someone is very agitated or when someone is excited. We also have enjambment. We've seen that earlier, where, again talking of punctuation, we don't stop at the end of the line. So there is no punctuation mark, there's no comma, there is no full stop. If you read poetry well, my dear friends, we should pause only when there is a punctuation mark, and usually a full stop or a comma. So when you look at this line 4, for example, I know you don't have the poem in front of you, but I wish some of you would get copies of the poems and look at it. So I'm talking of line 4. There shall be in that rich earth. There shall be, the line comes to an end, but I don't stop there. There shall be in that rich earth a richer dust concealed. A little bit of holding your breath maybe, but you continue to read it. So you have that enjambment. The whole poem is about war. It's about the soul of the soldier. It's about the heart of the soldier. But don't miss out the figures of speech if you really want to appreciate good poetry. The Soldier also has another title. 1914, The Soldier. Remember, that's when the First World War began. If we really want to understand history, I think we should go to the poems. Remember, history is not only in history books. History is in literature. And I would say, lest we forget. Let's go and look up war poems. Just that title will bring about 1,000 poems to you from all over the world.